The day began like any other, but it ended in a way I could never have anticipated. I had just returned home from a long day at work, the weight of the world resting on my shoulders. As usual, I parked the car in the driveway, and as I stepped out, I noticed something odd. The garage door was slightly ajar, and a flicker of movement caught my eye. I paused, a sense of unease creeping over me. I had learned to trust my instincts, and right then, they screamed at me to investigate. I walked slowly to the garage, my heart pounding in my chest. The moment I entered, I was greeted by a scene that would change my life forever. There in the dim light of the garage was my wife, Sarah, entangled with Mark, the mechanic. They were so lost in their moment that they didn't even notice me standing there, frozen in disbelief. Time stopped. The world around me faded away, and all I could hear was the pounding of my heart. The sight of their intimacy felt like a knife ripping through my chest. How could this happen? My mind raced with questions, each more painful than the last. I thought about the years we had spent together, the trust we had built, and the love I thought was unbreakable. But in that instant, all of it shattered like glass. The betrayal was so vivid, so raw, that it left me gasping for air. I stumbled back, my mind in a whirlwind. I wanted to scream, to shout, to confront them right then and there. But instead, I turned and walked away, the weight of their actions pressing down on me like a heavy fog. I needed to think, to process what I had just seen. I felt sick, a deep, gnawing pain in my stomach that wouldn't go away. How could she do this to me? How could she betray our vows so easily? When I finally gathered the courage to confront her, my heart raced with a mix of rage and despair. I had spent the last hour pacing in our living room, replaying the scene over and over in my mind, trying to make sense of it all. I felt like a fool, a man whose trust had been shattered in the most brutal way possible. "Sarah," I called out as I entered the house, my voice trembling with emotion. She appeared in the hallway, her face pale, eyes wide with shock. I could see the panic setting in as she realized I knew. "We need to talk." "What are you talking about?" She stammered, trying to play innocent, but the guilt was written all over her face. I couldn't believe she thought she could hide it from me. "I saw you," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I saw you with Mark, in the garage. How could you?" My voice broke at the last word, and I felt a tear slip down my cheek. I was angry, hurt, and utterly betrayed. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. I could see the gears turning in her mind, searching for a justification, a way to explain the unexplainable. "It's not what it looks like," she finally managed to say, desperation creeping into her tone. "Not what it looks like," I echoed, incredulous. "You were in his arms, Sarah. How can you even say that? You slept with him." The words tasted bitter on my tongue. "I was lonely, okay." She shot back, her voice rising. "You're never around, you work all the time. I needed someone, and he needed someone, so you decided to betray me." I interrupted, my heart racing with fury. "That's your excuse. You couldn't come to me and talk about it. You had to sneak around like a coward." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment I saw a flicker of remorse, but it was quickly replaced by defensiveness. "You don't understand. You're always so busy, so focused on work." I felt abandoned. The conversation spiraled into a whirlwind of accusations and justifications. I wanted to believe that we could salvage our marriage, that somehow we could work through this, but the reality of her betrayal loomed over us like a dark cloud. It suffocated any hope I had left. As the confrontation reached its peak, I felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. I didn't want to be the victim anymore. I wanted to reclaim my power. In that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. I would take the car, our car, and leave her stranded. It was a small act of revenge, but it felt like the only thing I could control in a situation where I felt utterly powerless. The confrontation ended as abruptly as it began, leaving us both breathless and reeling from the emotional fallout. I could see the realization dawning on Sarah's face, a mix of fear and confusion. As I turned away from her, my mind was racing, the adrenaline pumping through my veins. I was no longer the hurt husband. I had shifted into a phase of calculated resolve. I had a plan, and it was time to execute it. I stormed out of the house, my heart pounding, and made my way to the garage. The car sat there, gleaming under the fluorescent lights, seemingly indifferent to the storm brewing inside me. I had always loved that car. It was a symbol of our life together, a testament to our shared dreams. but now it felt like a weight, a reminder of the betrayal that had shattered everything. As I slid into the driver's seat, I felt a rush of power. I could take this away from her. I could leave her stranded, without a means to escape the mess she had created. It was a petty act, perhaps, but it was mine. I turned the key in the ignition and the engine roared to life, drowning out the chaos in my mind. I was taking control, reclaiming a piece of my shattered dignity. Driving away from the house felt surreal. The streets passed by in a blur, my thoughts racing faster than the car itself. I didn't know where I was going, but I didn't care. I just needed to put distance between me and the scene of my heartbreak. As I navigated through familiar roads, I felt a strange mix of liberation and sadness. I was free from her betrayal, but the emptiness inside me echoed louder than the engine's roar. But as I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling of impending consequences. Leaving Sarah stranded wasn't just about revenge. It was also about making a statement. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices, to understand the repercussions of her actions. I wanted her to know that I would not be a passive participant in this betrayal. I wanted her to suffer, if only a little, for the pain she had caused me. After a while, I found myself parked in a secluded area, away from prying eyes. I took a deep breath and allowed myself to reflect on what had just transpired. The anger that had fueled me slowly began to fade, replaced by a creeping sense of dread. What had I become? I was a man driven by betrayal, willing to hurt the woman I once loved to reclaim my sense of self. It was a bitter pill to swallow. I thought about Sarah, sitting at home, likely in tears or filled with anger. I had left her without a car, without a means to get around, and without me. I imagined her calling friends or family for help, only to be met with questions and judgment. Would she feel remorse? Would she realize the gravity of her actions? Or would she simply blame me for her predicament? As I sat there, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt. Was I being too harsh? I had loved her once, and despite everything, a part of me still did. But then I remembered the image of her with Mark, the intimacy they shared, and the betrayal that cut deeper than any knife. I shook my head, trying to dispel the lingering doubts. No. I had to stick to my plan. This was about self-preservation, about making sure she understood the consequences of her actions. After what felt like hours, I finally decided it was time to head back. I maneuvered the car back onto the road, my heart heavy with uncertainty. What would happen when I returned home? Would she be waiting for me, filled with apologies and regret? Or would she lash out, defiant in her anger? I had no idea, but I was ready to face whatever came next. As I pulled into the driveway, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The house was quiet, almost eerily so. I stepped out of the car, taking a moment to gather my thoughts. I had made my choice. Now I had to see it through. I walked towards the front door, my heart racing with anticipation and dread. I was about to confront the reality of my actions and the impact they would have on both of us. The moment I stepped inside, the tension in the air was palpable. Sarah stood in the living room, her expression a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You took the car," she demanded, her voice rising. "How could you do this to me?" I took a deep breath, ready to respond, but the weight of the situation hung heavy between us. I had left her stranded, and now she was facing the consequences of her betrayal. Would she understand? Would she finally grasp the pain she had caused? The atmosphere in the living room felt charged, like the calm before a storm. Sarah stood there, arms crossed tightly over her chest, her eyes blazing with a mix of anger and disbelief. It was almost as if she was daring me to say something, to justify my actions in a way that would somehow make sense of the chaos we were both trapped in. "Why would you take the car?" she repeated, her voice trembling with indignation. "You're punishing me for what I did, but this isn't going to solve anything." Her words were sharp, but they felt hollow, lacking any real understanding of the pain she had caused. I took a moment, choosing my words carefully. "You think I'm punishing you?" I asked, my voice steady. "You betrayed me, Sarah. You chose to sleep with the one person I trusted to keep our car running, and now you want me to feel sorry for you." She opened her mouth to respond, but I could see the realization dawning on her face. She had crossed a line, and now she was grappling with the consequences. "This isn't fair," she said, her voice softer now, almost pleading. I made a mistake, but taking the car isn't going to fix anything. It's just going to make everything worse. I felt a surge of anger at her words. Worse. You think this is about making things worse for you. I'm trying to make you understand what you've done. This is about accountability, Sarah. You need to realize that your actions have consequences. She turned away, running a hand through her hair in frustration. You're being so vindictive. I get that I messed up, but this isn't the way to handle it. You're just making everything worse for both of us. Her words stung. I hadn't wanted to be vindictive. I wanted to reclaim some semblance of control. I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal, to understand how deeply she had hurt me. But now, standing there in the silence of our home, I began to wonder if I had crossed a line myself. Maybe I am being vindictive, I admitted, my voice dropping. But you need to know that I won't just roll over and accept this. You hurt me, Sarah. You broke our vows. I can't just pretend everything is fine. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a brief moment I saw a flicker of regret in her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't mean for it to happen. I was lonely, and Mark, he was there. I didn't think it would lead to this. Didn't think it would lead to what? I snapped, frustration bubbling over. To you lying in bed with another man. To you betraying everything we built together. You didn't think about me at all. The silence that followed was deafening. We stood there, two people caught in a web of hurt and betrayal, and I could feel the weight of our shared history pressing down on us. It was suffocating, and I wanted to escape, to run away from the pain that hung in the air like a thick fog, but I couldn't run. I had made my choice, and now I had to see it through. I had to ensure that Sarah faced the reality of her actions, that she understood the impact of her betrayal. I need time, Sarah, I said finally, my voice firm. Time to figure out what I want and what this means for us. I can't just forgive and forget, not after what you did. She nodded slowly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I understand, she said quietly. But please don't leave me like this. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. I shook my head. You can't just say that. You need to show me. You need to prove to me that you understand the depth of your betrayal. As I turned to leave the room, I felt a strange mix of emotions. I was angry, hurt, and yet there was a part of me that wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that we could fix this, that we could somehow salvage our marriage. But the image of her with Mark loomed large in my mind. Constant reminder of the trust that had been shattered. I walked into the kitchen, the silence of the house almost deafening. I opened the fridge and grabbed a bottle of water, my hands shaking slightly as I tried to steady my breathing. I needed to think, to process everything that had just happened. In that moment, I realized that I was not just angry at Sarah. I was also angry at myself. Angry for not seeing the signs, for letting my guard down. I had trusted her, and now that trust was gone. I felt like a fool, a man who had been blindsided by the one person he thought he could rely on. As I sat at the kitchen table, I couldn't help but think about the next steps. I had taken the car, but what else could I do to ensure that Sarah understood the consequences of her actions? I needed to isolate her, to make sure she didn't have an easy way out. The thought sent a chill down my spine. I was becoming someone I didn't recognize, someone willing to hurt the woman I once loved to reclaim my sense of control. But the anger inside me was powerful, and I was determined to see my plan through. The days that followed our confrontation were a haze of confusion and emotional turmoil. I had taken the car, and with it, I had taken a piece of our life together. Sarah was left without a way to get around, and I could feel the tension in the air every time we crossed paths in the house. It was as if we were living in two separate worlds, both haunted by the choices that had led us to this moment. I watched her as she tried to navigate her new reality. Without the car, she was reliant on others for transportation, a friend here, a family member there. I could see the frustration in her eyes, the way she struggled to adjust to the sudden changes in her life. But deep down, I knew that this was exactly what I wanted. I needed her to feel the weight of her betrayal. I wanted her to understand that her actions had consequences, and I was determined to make sure she did. Every time she asked me for the car, I felt a surge of satisfaction. I need it for work, she would say, desperation creeping into her voice. It's not fair to keep it from me. But I would simply shake my head, maintaining my stance. You made your choices, Sarah. Now you have to deal with the fallout. At night, I would lie awake, listening to the silence that enveloped our home. I could hear Sarah moving around, the soft sounds of her trying to find solace in the chaos we had created. I felt the weight of my own decisions pressing down on me, and yet there was a strange sense of empowerment that came with it. I was no longer the passive victim. I was the one in control. But as the days turned into weeks, I began to notice the toll it was taking on both of us. Sarah was becoming increasingly isolated, her friends stopping by less often, and her phone calls dwindling. I could see the loneliness in her eyes, and while part of me reveled in her suffering, another part of me felt a pang of guilt. Was I being too harsh? Was I becoming the villain in our story? One evening, as I sat in the living room, Sarah approached me, her expression more vulnerable than I had seen in weeks. "Can we talk?" she asked softly, her voice trembling slightly. I could tell she was struggling to find the right words, and for the first time I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the moment we could begin to mend the broken pieces of our relationship. "Talk about what?" I replied, my tone guarded. I didn't want to let my guard down too easily. "About us." "About what happened," she said, her eyes searching mine for understanding. "I know I messed up and I've been trying to figure out how to make things right, but I need your help." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued but still wary. "Help? You think you can just say you're sorry and everything will go back to normal? It doesn't work that way, Sarah." "I know it doesn't," she said quickly, frustration creeping into her voice. "But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. I'll go to counseling, I'll talk to my friends about it, whatever you want. I don't want to lose you." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, the desperation that came from someone who had realized the gravity of their actions. But could I trust her again? Could I really believe that she was willing to put in the effort to rebuild what we had lost? "I don't know, Sarah," I admitted, my voice low. "You broke my trust. It's not something that can be easily repaired." "I understand that," she replied, her voice steady now. "But I want to try. I want to be better. I want to show you that I can change." I felt a wave of conflicting emotions wash over me. Part of me wanted to believe her, to give her a chance to make amends. But another part of me was still simmering with anger, still raw from the betrayal. I couldn't just turn off those feelings, they were part of me now. "Why should I believe you?" I asked, my voice firm. "You had every opportunity to come to me, to talk to me about your feelings. Instead, you chose to sleep with someone else." "How do I know this isn't just another empty promise?" She took a deep breath, her eyes welling with tears. "Because I'm standing here admitting that I was wrong. I'm not asking for forgiveness right now. I'm asking for a chance to prove that I can be the partner you deserve. I know it's going to take time, but I'm willing to fight for us." Her vulnerability struck a chord deep within me. I could see the fear in her eyes, the fear of losing everything we had built together. It was a stark contrast to the defiance she had shown during our earlier confrontations. I felt the walls I had built around my heart begin to tremble, but I was still hesitant. "Time doesn't mean anything if there's no action behind it," I said slowly. "You need to show me that you're serious about this. It's not enough to just say the words, you need to prove it." "I will," she said, her voice resolute. "I'll do whatever it takes. Just please don't give up on me yet." As she stood there, vulnerability etched on her face, I felt the weight of my own decisions pressing down on me. I was still angry, still hurt, but perhaps there was a glimmer of hope buried beneath the pain. I didn't want to be the villain in our story, but I also couldn't ignore the betrayal that had cut so deeply. "Let's see how this plays out," I finally said, my voice softer now. "But know that I won't make it easy for you. Trust takes time, and you shattered mine." She nodded, a mixture of relief and determination flooding her expression. "I understand, and I'll do everything I can to earn it back." As I watched her walk away, I felt a strange mix of emotions. The road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but perhaps, just perhaps, there was a way to navigate it together. The days turned into weeks, and the tension between Sarah and me slowly began to shift. I had made my stance clear, and while I was still grappling with my feelings of betrayal, I could see that she was genuinely trying. It was a strange feeling, watching her attempt to rebuild the bridges that had been burned. Each small gesture, each effort she made to show me she was committed. To change was a step toward healing, but I was still cautious, still guarded. Sarah started attending counseling sessions, both alone and eventually inviting me to join her. The therapist encouraged open communication, and I found myself reluctantly sharing my feelings. It was hard to open up about the anger and hurt that festered inside me, but I knew it was necessary. If we were going to move forward, we needed to confront the pain head-on. "I still can't believe you would do this," I told her one evening during a session. "You made a choice to betray me, and that choice shattered my trust. It's hard for me to see past that." "I know," she replied, her voice trembling, "and I hate that I hurt you, but I want you to know that I'm working on myself. I'm trying to understand why I made those choices and how to prevent it from happening again." As we continued our sessions, I found myself softening, if only slightly. The vulnerability she showed in those moments made me reconsider my initial stance. Could I see a way forward? Could I allow myself to forgive her? But then, there were days when the pain would hit me like a tidal wave, dragging me back into the depths of despair. I would see a picture of us from happier times or hear a song that reminded me of our life together, and the memories would flood back. Anger would bubble up inside me, and I would question everything all over again. One evening, I came home to find Sarah sitting at the dining table, a stack of papers in front of her. She looked up as I entered, a nervous smile on her face. "I was thinking we could work on a new budget together," she said, trying to sound upbeat. "I know finances have been tight and I want to help." I raised an eyebrow, skepticism creeping in. "Budgeting, is this really what you want to focus on right now?" "It's a start," she replied, her voice steady. "I want us to be a team again. I want to show you that I'm committed to making things right. I know it sounds mundane, but this is part of rebuilding our life together." I sighed, feeling the weight of her words. "I appreciate the effort, but we need to address the bigger issues first. We can't just gloss over what happened." She nodded, understanding my reluctance. "You're right. Maybe we should talk about how we can rebuild trust in other areas too. I want to be transparent with you, to show you that I'm serious about changing." As we sat there discussing our finances, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were both tiptoeing around the real issues. The betrayal was still fresh, and while I could see her efforts, I was hesitant to fully embrace them. I wanted to believe that we could mend our relationship, but the scars left by her infidelity were deep. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I found myself reflecting on our situation. I had taken the car as a means of asserting control, a way to make her feel the consequences of her actions. But now, as I watched her work to rebuild our life, I wondered if I had been too harsh. Was isolation truly the answer, or was it just a way for me to avoid confronting my own pain? In the following days, I began to soften my stance. I agreed to let Sarah use the car for certain errands, under the condition that she would keep me updated on her whereabouts. It was a small concession, but it felt like a step in the right direction. I could see that she was genuinely trying to earn back my trust, and I began to feel a flicker of hope. But as we moved forward, I also knew that I had to be vigilant. I couldn't allow myself to be naive again, to let my guard down completely. I had to protect my heart while still allowing space for healing. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, I turned to her, my heart racing. "I want to believe that we can get through this, but I need you to be completely honest with me. If there are any lingering feelings for Mark, I need to know now." She looked at me, her expression serious. "There aren't any feelings for him. I made a terrible mistake and I regret it every day. I want to be with you, and I'm committed to making things right." I searched her eyes for any hint of deception, but all I saw was sincerity. "Okay, then let's work on this together," I said, feeling a sense of resolve wash over me. "But know that it's going to take time and I'm going to need to see consistent effort from you." "I understand," she replied, her voice softening. "I'm ready to do whatever it takes." As we sat there together, I felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps we could rebuild what had been lost, piece by piece. But I knew that the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges. Trust was not something that could be restored overnight. It would take patience and commitment from both of us. As the weeks turned into months, the journey of rebuilding our relationship was anything but linear. There were days filled with laughter and shared moments of joy, and then there were days when the shadows of betrayal crept back in, reminding me of the pain that had once engulfed us. Each day felt like a delicate balancing act, trying to move forward while still grappling with the ghosts of our past. Sarah continued to put in the effort, attending counseling and engaging in open conversations about her feelings and our relationship. I watched as she transformed, not just in her actions but in her demeanor. She was more present, more engaged, and she seemed genuinely committed to making amends. But I still felt a lingering unease, a reminder that trust was not easily rebuilt. One evening, after a particularly good day where we had laughed together over dinner, I found myself contemplating the future. I had let her use the car more freely, and while it was a step toward normalcy, I still felt the weight of my initial decision pressing down on me. I had wanted her to feel the consequences of her actions, but had I gone too far? Had I left her stranded for too long, both literally and emotionally? I decided to bring it up. "Sarah," I said, my voice steady, "I've been thinking a lot about the car and how I handled everything. I realize now that I may have taken it too far. You were genuinely trying to make things right, and I was holding on to my anger." She looked at me, surprised but attentive. "I appreciate you saying that. It means a lot to me because I know I hurt you deeply. But I also want you to know that your actions affected me too. I felt isolated, and it made me realize how much I depended on you." I nodded, acknowledging her feelings. "I didn't want to isolate you. I wanted you to understand the impact of your choices. But I see now that it may have pushed you further away instead of bringing us closer." Her expression softened. "I understand why you felt that way. It was a painful time for both of us. I can't change what happened, but I can promise to continue being honest and open with you." In that moment, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. We were both acknowledging our roles in this tumultuous journey. It was not just about her betrayal or my reaction. It was about us as a couple navigating the aftermath together. As the days continued to pass, I found myself slowly letting go of the resentment that had once consumed me. I began to allow the possibility of forgiveness into my heart. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight, but I could feel the walls I had built around my heart starting to crumble. One afternoon, while we were in the living room, I decided to take a leap of faith. "How about we plan a weekend getaway?" I suggested, trying to infuse some positivity into our lives. "Somewhere we can reconnect, just the two of us." Her eyes lit up with excitement. "That sounds amazing. I'd love that. We can go back to the cabin we rented last summer. Remember how much fun we had?" I smiled at the memory. "Yeah, I remember. It was nice to escape for a bit." As we planned the getaway, I felt a renewed sense of hope. Perhaps this was the beginning of a new chapter for us, one where we could learn to trust again and rebuild our relationship on a stronger foundation. The weekend arrived, and as we drove to the cabin, I felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Would we be able to relax and enjoy each other's company? Would we be able to truly connect without the weight of our past looming over us? When we arrived, the beauty of the surroundings enveloped us. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, and the sun cast a warm glow over the landscape. It felt like a fresh start. As we settled in, I watched Sarah take a deep breath, a smile spreading across her face. "Look at this place," she said, her eyes sparkling. "It's beautiful. I can't believe we're finally here together." We spent the weekend exploring, hiking, and reminiscing about the good times we had shared before the betrayal. Slowly, I felt the tension between us begin to dissipate. We laughed, held hands, and for the first time in a long while I felt a sense of normalcy returning to our relationship. On our last night, as we sat by the fire, I turned to her, my heart full. "Thank you for being open to this," I said softly. "I know it hasn't been easy, and I appreciate your efforts to rebuild our trust." She reached for my hand, her expression earnest. "I'm grateful too. I know I have a long way to go, but I'm committed to us. I want to make this work, and I'll do whatever it takes." In that moment, I realized that while the scars of betrayal would always be a part of our story, they didn't have to define us. We had the power to choose how we moved forward. I felt a sense of hope blooming within me, a belief that we could create a new narrative together. As we sat there, the crackling fire casting a warm glow around us, I made a silent vow to myself. I would allow myself to heal, to forgive, and to trust again. It wouldn't be easy, but with each small step we took together, I felt more confident that we could emerge from the shadows of our past and into the light of a brighter future. Here, to new beginnings, I said, raising my glass to her. To new beginnings, she echoed, her eyes shining with determination. And in that moment, surrounded by the beauty of nature and the warmth of our shared commitment, I felt a flicker of hope for what lay ahead. We were on a journey of healing, and together we would navigate the road to recovery, one step at a time. "Thank you for being part of this journey with me," I whispered, and as I looked into her eyes, I knew that we were ready to face whatever came next.